That's right, boys and girls. It's time for another Vox podcast. This is Mike Erie with a bit of a sexy voice going, more sexy than normal. I'm Andy. I've been fighting. It's either a cold or a flu, but there are some flu elements in the cold.
Ooh.
And there's some cold elements in the flu. So I've been calling it a clue. I've been fighting the clue lately, and this is like the first day my voice could withstand talking. So happy Monday to you, Andy Bear. Hair's getting long. The mustache is shorn.
Yep.
The Mighty Ducks gear is on. That's right. I forget hockey's going right now.
Yeah, I know.
I have no idea.
I know. It is.
Because, yeah, hockey represents that period between the end of football and the beginning of baseball.
Yeah.
So anyway, are you doing okay? Are you good, Andy?
We're doing okay. They have started to rebuild my kitchen. So I'm hoping that they will have it built, everything done by Wednesday or Thursday of this week.
Dude, I got an email from Amazon Music right now that said Def Leppard is now streaming. All right. So it's a good day for us, Andy. I don't care about your kitchen. I don't care about the clue. Doggone it, Def Leppard is streaming, and we are hysterical.
Well, wouldn't that only appeal to those who wouldn't own either the vinyl or the CD, which I have vinyl of them. So, I mean, I wouldn't care if they're streaming. I could put that on anytime I want.
That's right. That's what I do.
Yep.
Andy Bear, I've got some bad news.
Uh-oh.
We got some comments on the last podcast.
Yeah. That we did.
And I am shocked because everything we have done has been so universally acclaimed that I don't know what to do with negative comments. So we were trying to talk about this guy who confesses to what he calls a sexual incident, but what she says is sexual assault, and there was a variance in their ages and the power differential and all this stuff. And I thought, Andy, it would be good to wade into as it was unfolding, but now I need to reconsider my whole approach. There were some rather pointed critiques of our approach to this that we want to share. First of all, because I think they make some great points. Secondly, because we never want to be afraid to engage stuff that makes us look bad, which. That's why we don't do a vlogcast and show our faces. And then thirdly, I mean, we were trying to do something where we didn't have all the facts, and perhaps, well, I guess we do that all the time, in one sense. But certainly with this case. So Andy, why don't you go ahead and unleash the hounds?
Yeah.
On us, and let's see what we got.
All right, let's work our.
So first of all, in all seriousness, we are so grateful for people who engage with us this way, and so part of the reason we're going to take part of the podcast is that we just love that you engage, and it's respectful, and it's gracious, and it's pointed, and so thank you for that. We are obviously. In the process of learning and growing too, so appreciate this. That's why we feel like it's worth taking time to do this. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're gonna avoid names here, so that way you guys can just hear the content. And we're posting this because we I think a lot of great things were said here. So here we go.
So Mom, don't worry, I won't use your name.
Here we go. Number one, Mike, loved that you shed light on the issue of church too. I'm used to you shooting straight and being raw. Instead, I'm surprised how you and Andy danced around with so carefully not to shame the original church. If you're going to speak about the issue that uses your platform, if you're going to speak about the issue, use that platform to speak, all caps. Instead, it was just filled
Dang.
with, well, if it's true, ... not to judge, not sure what really
Right.
happened. We weren't
Right.
there. We don't know how sure it is. If it was just a girl with a blog, etc. Guys, grow a pair. Mike, you are the only person that I consider inside the Beltway where you actually have the inside scoop on being a church leader and leading thousands. I know
Right.
of no other leader who shares the honesty of the dirty side of ministry. I'm so
Right.
thankful for that, and that is the main reason I listen. Now, I'm not saying you were making excuses for the church, but stand up more. Your whole premise was, quote, not to speculate, quote, and being, quote, nuancy. But 30 minutes on the podcast was dancing around the issue that evangelical leadership has been protecting itself.
Well, yes. So, to that critique, I have 3 kids, so I have a pair. Let me just throw that out there right now. No, but thank you for listening. And I get it. And even after we were done recording, I was wondering if we should have waited till more information came out, because I felt like I had to dance, because I've been on the inside of a couple of these issues and have learned they're far more nuanced than sometimes appear. I don't think this is one of those cases.
Right.
So I will absolutely take your admonition. I kind of assumed, and I think I was too soft on this, I kind of assumed that we all knew how horrible this was.
Yeah.
And how ridiculous applauding. So I was kind of assuming that in the comments, but I should have made that absolutely more clear. In terms of the first church, yeah, I didn't know anything about what had happened, so I felt so bad speaking and critiquing a church that I had known nothing about. But as it's turned out, that they didn't reach out to the police, and that is
Right.
absolutely egregious, and it looks like that they were silencing her side of the story to protect themselves. I mean, absolutely, that is horrific. So, what I hear you saying is either take a stronger stance, even though there's still things coming to light, or just wait till it comes to light,
Right.
and then take a stance. So that's fair.
Yeah.
I judge that fair.
Yeah. Fair critique. We'll give that the yellow light.
Fair.
Fair. Okay. No, that was great. Okay. Next one. First, I want to say I love you guys in the podcast. This particular one just left
Thank you.
out a couple things I'd like to point out.
Good.
1 of 4. 1, it would have been great for you to have a woman on the cast to share from her perspective.
Always.
True. 2,
True.
the reason a woman would have waited 20 years is exactly the fact that people pick her apart for speaking up. Can anyone
Yes.
seriously tell me of any known incident of a woman making this stuff up other than on TV?
I have one. No, seriously. I mean, we had one where at a church I worked at, somebody laid out allegations against a pastor that were not true. So, and they were very, very serious. So,
Yeah.
So yes, your point stands, and I'm not in any way contradicting the point.
But it does happen.
I've also been on, but yeah, it does. As rare as it is, and I get your point about why people don't speak up. Absolutely, and I don't even know what that feels like.
Right.
So absolutely, point given.
Yep. Okay, number 3, her age wasn't even the issue. It would have been a crime if she were 17 or 70, right? Because if we're looking at it as
Well, that's
sexual
a fair
assault.
point. Yeah, you're right. You're
For
right.
sure.
You're right. That's good. We missed that nuance.
Yep. 4, until you have been a 17-year-old girl, you can't understand the power that male church leadership has over you, which leads me back to my point. Have a woman on the show next time. Thanks. Y'all are great. Right. And yeah.
Yep. Fair. The issue here's something. Whoever's writing this, and I'm assuming this is a woman. Here's what I wrestle with, and I really need some help thinking this through. Because on the one hand, so you've got this whole Me Too phenomenon happening. And we haven't talked about it because, I figure Andy and I, at least I can't speak for him. But for me, it's like, well, I'm not sure male voices are needed to discuss this. We applaud this movement. We think it's, I think it was Andy who was saying this is the fruit of seeds that have been born and, or planted like since the 50s and 60s. So
Right.
this is a great thing, but we haven't talked about it because we didn't think male voices were, required to chime in. on this instance. This one was different because of the fact that it was a mega church, the fact that I've been in a couple of these scenarios. So it felt like I had something to say. But here's the issue I wrestle with. Yes, of course it would have been better. And we pursue folks to be on our podcast a lot, particularly of the female persuasion. But when it doesn't work out or something's happening in real time, I still think it's okay to talk about it while granting the fact that the perspective isn't complete. Is that perspective, the one I just said, is that perspective legit? In other words, do we need to feel like if there's anything involving Church 2, Me Too, assault, rape culture, whatever, that we should just remain silent unless we have a female voice on it? That's the question I have for you, because I don't know the answer to that. So great point. Absolutely, we would have benefited from somebody who could express the power differential in ways that I obviously would never know. So fair. Judge that one fair.
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks for being gracious and pointing that out.
All right. So
by the way, I haven't heard these. These are all new.
All right, here we go. Next one. I appreciate the effort to address this issue in the context of the church. I would like to address two things that seem to be possible blind spots in the conversation.
Ooh, I like that. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, here we go. Number one, you seemed very focused on the legality of the issue, that if she were 18, not 17, it would be a different conversation, which is true. However, you seem to miss the power differential between the youth pastor and youth, that he has forever altered her ability to trust men in leadership, especially in the church. This is an abuse of power on his part, no matter how flirty or flattered she was by his attention.
Okay, good.
2, while speaking about not silencing women, you effectively silence this woman by not doing the work to hear and understand her story. You seem to have at least listened to the pastor's side as you were able to speak to the apology, but didn't know even the basic facts of the case she was bringing. He was not 23. Correct. He was 23, not 20. He was on quote on staff, which implied authority. She spoke out now because she saw him post publicly condemning another story of impropriety that came out. Impropriety. Man, that's a word I did not know. In addressing this in what felt like trying to be neutral, but without even having basic facts about the story. It seems as her voice and her story are continued to be discounted and silenced. She says, I'm not trying to attack. I do appreciate you addressing this, but would suggest that you might benefit from having a woman speak into these conversations, just like you stated that these churches would benefit from women having voices in leadership.
I'm an ass. Absolutely. And we didn't have the facts. So yes. So we should have waited. That's what I take away from that is my Twitter feed was blown up over the standing ovation. So that's the part I wanted to talk about. But you're absolutely right. I didn't, that's why we were being so dancey and nuancy was I didn't know. So fair point.
Yep.
Fair point.
Okay. So,
I don't know how we can go on today.
Well, we have a good enough topic, I think, to go after that isn't going to fall victim to this. But last comment from a good friend of ours.
Yes.
Yeah. Guys, I know you said to, quote, please not hold you accountable for clarity of thought on this one, quote, and that it was just response, but I do have some thoughts. But there was a lot of time spent on what was truth and what maybe wasn't.
Yes.
I think that discussion is missing it. You touched on it briefly, but bottom line is that the response from the church was totally out of line, in my opinion. A standing ovation for an apology where the woman wasn't even present or knew about. Way to give this guy an attaboy. So I did take out the other... Our friend expressed a lot more opinion about this, which was actually consistent in alignment with everyone else's opinion. So, but, I just had to take that jab into consideration.
Yep. Not a jab.
Not at all.
A fair critique.
Yes, absolutely.
So, well said. Thank you. Mm-hmm. The other part of the critique I'd love to hear is, okay, so if there are times when we cannot or whatever don't have a woman on, can we still talk about this stuff?
Right.
And so that's a thing I'm genuinely curious about because yeah, I mean the last thing we want to do is disempower folks, but for various logistical reasons and stuff, we can't always work it out. So there you go,
Great.
you go. And I've been reaching out all over the place on the Twitter to some wonderful young ladies. So we'll see. We want to work and get better at that. So there you go.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and the last thing I have is then my
there's
friend.
more.
Well, this one isn't a critique. Well, I guess it's a critique of my understanding of certain legal aspects regarding age of relationships and that kind of thing too.
It's about time you get freaking critiqued for something, Andy.
You have no idea. I guard you. I guard your heart from all the critiques that come in towards me, because then you would just go into Wolverine mode. Just so this is from my friend Sarah. She's actually a social worker up in Seattle. So she was gracious enough to reach out and just kind of lay down just some basic facts here to understand this as it relates to even
we should have.
the situation.
That's the person we should have had on the podcast.
Yeah, perhaps
A female social worker would have been outstanding. If we knew the legality, because I didn't know what to call it.
Right.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Go.
so she said, I'm sure you've gotten this message about this, which no, I had not, by the way. As a child abuse prevention professional, the age of consent in most places is 16 or sometimes even younger, depending on the state. In addition to that, there are laws about age gaps. So, for example, a 17-year-old having sex with a 20-year-old is not statutory rape. I think most age gaps are 4 to 6 years, depending on the state. Now, if she was raped, it would just be rape, not rape of a minor or anything. So no, that's it. So just
what? But what had we said she was raped?
No, what I was saying was I was saying if you dismiss the sexual assault allegations. I was saying let's just take that out of the picture for a minute, and let's say that there was actually a consenting relationship that was taking place here, and that he revealed it to the early church at that time. I was saying on those grounds alone, if we're talking about a crime that's taken place here, then this needs to be handled, and it needed, you wouldn't just tuck this thing under a rug. So I was, and which will go back to one of the first comments that was made, that, even if she was 17 or 70, it would still be a crime. Well, that's where in this case, I was saying that's not what I was saying. I was saying if the sexual assault part of it wasn't even at play, and yet she was fully consenting and saying, no, I want to have a relationship with this guy. And let's say it wasn't that he came and said, I feel bad about this, and was admitting it to his church, but rather he was just like, no, this is just a relationship I'm in. I'm 21 years old dating a 17-year-old, right? So I was saying if that was a crime and it was basically being a hidden crime, I'd say we'd have some issues, even there that would need to be handled. So I was just trying to not minimizing what had happened, but rather just making a point that even if a crime was being taken place of a smaller allegation in that particular relationship, I'm saying I would have a problem with it. So that's where I was just that's where I was taking it, with granted that how everything was coming out felt like there wasn't enough facts. So
got it.
Anyhow, that's
all right. Well, those are fair critiques and graciously said. So thank you. I read it was a quote yesterday. I don't know. I don't think it was. The Bible says something similar, but this wasn't the quote from the Bible. But it was a true friend stabs you in the front, and it's the idea, of course, that true friends are always willing to point out blind spots, and so we're grateful for that. So appreciate you all commenting and caring enough to not only listen but to engage with us. So thanks.
Yeah.
But today, I've got some other bad news, Andy, because you are a doubter.
Right.
You are in sin. Okay. So our friends at desiringgod.org so sent this tweet out, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. And, it just gets me furious enough to
do a podcast.
To hit the link. But here was the original tweet.
Yeah.
Doubt is slander against the Almighty. Jesus died to save you from doubt, not to make space for it. Okay, that's interesting. And so that got my, what do they say, dander up? I don't even know what dander is, but I certainly don't have any in my head. Doubt is slander against the Almighty. Jesus died to save you from doubt, not to make space from it. Now, as a whole community built on the idea that the church should be the safest place to talk about anything, and where we try to really entertain some of the deep questions and doubts that people have, obviously they're either right or they're unbelievably wrong in terms of how it's stated unequivocally in this tweet. So I went to the article. I want to quote a bit from the article. This gentleman begins, "It's hard writing words you suspect will be misunderstood." Well, then don't freaking write them like that.
That's a good start.
Doubt is slander against the Almighty. But what about the passage in Jude that says, "Be merciful to those who doubt"? You know, what about Jesus, where he's getting ready to ascend, and it says that people were there, but some doubted, and Jesus doesn't rebuke them for their doubt; he commissions them in the midst of it. What about Thomas? You know, "I will not believe unless I see." And Jesus says, "Well, but blessed to you who believe, because you see, but man, even more blessed are those who believe and they don't see." And so there's room for both. I mean, just that tweet, if it's clickbait, it worked for sure.
Right.
But you don't then lead in by saying, "Hey, it's really hard to write these words that could be misunderstood." Well, that's a really dumb thing you said, and it's not true. And so, okay, I don't feel bad for you. My heart goes out to struggling saints who are prone to find fresh reasons to feel discouraged. I do not wish to harm them. Okay, well then don't say that crap. Jesus doesn't break bruised reeds or quench faintly burning wicks. Imagery that's from the Bible, but not readily understood in our culture. I don't want to either. My aim is not to take wheelchairs away from those who really need them, but to admonish the idle to stand and become strong in the Lord. Okay. So he gets into this analogy. It doesn't matter. So he's quoting an analogy he's heard for why it's okay to doubt. And he says, the analogy goes something like this. It doesn't matter if in the Old Testament the Israelites had weak faith. If they put blood on their door during Passover, they were still passed over. They were still saved. The issue isn't how strong your faith was, but how strong the object of your faith is. So it was the blood that saved you, not how strong your faith was, is the point. We do not have to have faith in our faith to be justified. Our faith is in the person and work of Jesus. Now that's the analogy, all right? It doesn't matter how strong or weak your faith is. Jesus, because he is strong, is the one that saves us. This is an analogy. Do you see what the analogy is getting at?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have faith or doubts, because you're saved because of what Jesus has done. End of story.
Right.
The analogy, he says, has done its job if it teaches the truth and beauty of justification by faith alone and lends courage to limping saints who, despite their best efforts and persistent pleas for divine help, feel beaten down and bruised. It reminds them to look outside of themselves to Jesus. Jesus will hold us up regardless of our clinging to him with a wearying grip. But this analogy betrays us when it is used to say the strength of one's faith is of little consequence, right? So the analogy is, hey, man, it didn't have to matter whether I had all my doctrine lined up or my faith steady. When I put the freaking blood on the door, that was all it took. It was the blood that rescued me. It wasn't the strength of my faith. Mm-hmm. So implication, doubting is okay because you're rescued regardless. Right. I think that's the analogy that's being made. And he's saying, this analogy betrays us when it's used to say the strength of one's faith is of little consequences. When we move from the realm of justification, which is our ultimate rescue, to sanctification, which is our remolding to be formed in the shape of Jesus. Instead of helping wounded saints find hope that leads to stronger faith, this analogy can often be used to protect idlers who are all too comfortable with their weak faith. These idlers are spiritual layabouts who do not wage war against their doubts. They even go so far as to tell us that harboring some doubt is healthy. It's encouraged. So I guess he wouldn't like Pete Enns' book, The Sin of Certainty.
Right.
They seem concerned to keep God's appointed means of grace at arm's length. They do not lose any of their many hours of sleep due to the fact that their doubts dishonor their master. No, they grumble against God. Feel free to keep doing so because, after all, there is blood upon their door. They live among wounded sheep to escape calls to faith, maturity, repentance. Such do not need coddling. They need admonishment. A lifetime of weak and wobbly faith is neither God-honoring nor safe. It is not a strength. It is not a virtue. It is not humility. It is a very serious problem. All right, so far, got it. Don't agree, but at least I think I understand what he's saying. You cannot come up with the model of weak faith from the Exodus story. So he goes on this 3-paragraph thing about, listen, the point of the Exodus story was to encourage their faith. Absolutely. Then he gets into the New Testament. He says, stammering, stumbling, crawling faith for one's entire life is not the depiction of saving faith in the New Testament. And I'm like, okay, the disciples?
Yeah.
They were still screwing up even after Jesus left, right? Paul, right, rebukes Peter for screw. I mean, maybe, okay, I don't know. Faith that saves us is characterized as being increasingly stable, steadfast, unshakable, never shifting, strong enough to shield us from Satan's attacks. It keeps us in the love of God, bears fruit, gains victory that overcomes the world. Yes, different seasons can make us wobblier than others, but the swaying legs of spiritual infancy need not be perpetual. Jesus often rebuked his disciples for their little faith. Doubting God makes us wind-tossed and double-minded. Weak faith in Romans does not make allowance for doubting God or his gospel. So then, and again, I'm just trying to do him enough justice so that no one can say that we were attacking a straw man. Then he says, let's see, doubt dishonors God is the next subheading. Being content with doubt, suspicion, and weak faith is the highest form of contempt we can muster against God. And then he quotes Luther, of course, because Luther had great faith his whole life, not. And it is tragic to return distrust and suspicion to the God of steadfast love and truth. We slander him when we refuse to trust him. The Father of truth is not the father of lies. The God of love is not the God of cruelty. The Son who hung on the cross for sinners, not to be regarded as a deceiver. Excuse me. Yeah. Okay. Another rant we got to skip. When doubt comes, and it will, whispering that God isn't true, the Bible isn't reliable, and Jesus' blood isn't enough, do not make peace with such lies. Do not embrace them. Do not boast about them. Instead, confess them and cling more tightly to the Savior, crying, I believe, help my unbelief. Okay. So, Andy, does this make sense so far in terms of what he's saying?
Yes. I mean,
so doubt and suspicion and deconstruction seems to be a badge of honor among some in the Christian community.
right. And I think in what he said, like those who are content with doubt, and that's where I was a little bit like, I don't know. I haven't met anyone who's having doubts and like, yeah, and I'm content with that. You know, everyone I've met that's kind of like, I'm wrestling with doubt, or I feel like whatever, I'm weak in my Christianity or weak in my faith. All of them to me feel like they're in tension. Like they're not content with that. Like they're more like they're asking questions. They're actually pushing harder into things. Like the doubt is taking them somewhere. They're not just sitting in it. I understand what you're saying. I do agree that there seems to be a bit of this kind of subculture that says like, okay, well now I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of in this whole other phase, you know, and like,
my point is there's a kernel of truth here.
Yeah.
That,
like that little piece, like that, what you just said, or that little piece, I'm like, okay, I get that idea of like coming against like those who are wearing that badge of honor. Yeah.
You don't want to idolize doubt.
Right.
And simply say, well, right. I mean, because then that's just another form of faith. I mean, you know, it's now it's not faith in Christ, it's faith in my doubting and my suspicion and whatever else. And so, on the one hand, I'm like, okay, there's a kernel of truth here, and I think God does want a mature faith for us. The issue is, what does a mature faith look like?
Right.
And for this individual, mature faith doesn't include lament or questions or wrestling with God.
Right.
It does not include agonizing loss. It does not include, why, God, have you forsaken me? It does not include, right? It just,
Right.
So
Right.
there are massive, massive issues here that I think, although he says, hey, I don't want to hurt anybody in this, that's bullcrap. You are hurting people with this.
Right.
And so, I want to kind of bang away at a couple of things I think I see on this.
Right. And I read the first sentence differently than you did, by the way. So let me pick that nuance, because I'm wondering how that plays out. Because for him to say it's hard to write words that are commonly misunderstood, I don't hear it for him as skillfully hard. I hear it as it's hard to be the guy to tell you bad news. And I'm going to be that guy right now. That's how I heard that.
Oh, got
I heard it
yeah.
more from like a pride kind of like, tone. So
woe is me.
Whichever I got to be the guy. You don't understand how hard it is for me to tell you this.
Oh, well,
like
all right.
that kind of
I'm
tone.
going to choose to be more gracious.
Yeah, you can. That's fine. I'll hold the other line.
So I think so. First of all, I would have issues with the tone of this thing, left and right. Secondly, he seems to confuse doubt and unbelief.
Yeah.
Jesus, no question, critiques unbelief. He could not do miracles because of their unbelief, right? He rebukes people of little faith. But it wasn't because they had little faith. It was because they had seen so much. and they should have had more because of what they'd seen.
Yeah.
Are you still so slow to believe? Now, the kind of unbelief that I think is being criticized here, and in some ways rightly, is, okay, I'm just going to marinate in my unbelief and use that as an excuse not to follow, not to risk, not to repent. Fair enough. And there is a kind of unbelief that is a form of revolt, rebellion, right? There's just no matter, because there are questions, I'm never going to believe it. And I'm just going to keep milking those questions, never try to resolve them, so that I'm not held accountable for what would happen if it was true. Okay, fair enough. But that is not the vast majority of people who are wrestling with big questions as the world becomes globalized and pluralized.
Yeah.
Right? That is not the vast majority of people who upon meeting people who love Jesus and who say that they're gay, it is not doubting God to go back and say, okay, I got to look at this. It is not doubting God to say, hey, there seems to be this unholy wedding of politics and Christian faith. We really need to re-examine the words of Jesus, and how the modern church has interpreted them. Right. It's not doubt. It's because I love God and want to honor God that I wrestle with all these questions.
Right.
Right? It's precisely the opposite attitude of what he describes. This is not idleness. This is not excuse making. This is absolutely because I'm fascinated and compelled by the person of Jesus, because I absolutely adore him, because I want to be like him, and yet there are parts of the Bible that seem different from him. I got to wrestle with that.
Yeah.
I have to wrestle with that. And to me, to call that slander against God dismisses many of the lament psalms. It dismisses Lamentations. I mean, it's like this person's never read the laments of the Old Testament, man. And so I think he's fundamentally doubting doubt. He's not doubting. He's fundamentally confusing doubt and unbelief. Right? There is a stiff-necked rebellion. You refuse to believe just because you're rebellious. Yes, that is condemned. No question about it. But does mature faith look like never having questions? Now, and this goes to our second critique, Andy, and the even more damaging one. He seems to equate having faith as having confidence in the answers. And we spent 2 or 3 podcasts. So if that's what faith is, well, then of course doubting is bad.
Right.
Right? If faith is just psychological certainty, right? That I not only I know the answers, but I believe the answers. If that's all faith is, well, then of course doubting is bad. But when and you can go back, dear listener, and dig through the archives. How many episodes have we done? Do you know?
This is 100. This will be 103, I believe. So I think Faith and
Dang, look
Doubt,
at
I want to
us.
say, was like episode 4, actually, or
Well,
5. It's
I think slightly later than that because we spent a lot of time on LGBTQ stuff and judgment and stuff. But yeah, it's like in the first 10 episodes, I think.
yeah,
But we went through, and I'm gonna rehash this just really really quickly to say, well, faith just isn't psychological certainty. So it's like if I get rid of my questions, then I have biblical faith. No, that's not it. Profession of faith is not faith because even demons can profess faith. It's not good theology because you can have convictions that are 100% orthodox and still be greedy. Right? So
right,
so we said, and I think this is what the scripture and the word group around the word faith teaches, faith is action based on trust. And trust is different than certainty, right?
right.
I don't know for sure that my wife isn't in love with Matt Damon. In fact, I have reason to believe it to be true. And that's why we don't watch Matt Damon movies in my house. No, that's a bad example. I'm not certain that my wife will be faithful to me. Right? And yet, because of our history together, I trust that she would be. So trust is a different concept than certainty.
Right.
Right? Trust is relational. Trust is covenantal. Trust is action. So when he uses the analogy of, well, hey, it didn't matter how strong or weak their faith was, as long as they put blood on the door. Well, crap, putting blood on the door was an expression of faith.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so it's kind of like I don't even see what your analogy, banging away at that analogy does. And then we talked about faith is honesty within a covenantal relationship. So you have Paul talking about, all truth is God's truth. You have Israel wrestling with the Lord. You have room for lament. You have Jude saying, "Be merciful to those who doubt." You have room for this because it's honest. What God isn't interested in you mustering up the psychological certainty so that you can convince yourself by just rehearsing facts. No, He wants your trust, your adoration, your love, your worship. That is progressive. Does mature faith? Does mature faith look like pretending or look like honesty? Mm-hmm. Well, I think the clear biblical teaching is that faith looks like honesty. So Thomas can say, I don't buy it from you guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So that even the disciples who saw Jesus after his resurrection were still doubting that this whole thing was legit. And Jesus doesn't rebuke them.
Right. Right.
And so I just think that this article, although it talks about the weak need saints who need wheelchairs and whatever else, I mean, it just does a rotten job of nuancing the fact that in the Christian life there is room, not only room for, but the Bible gives voice to questions and wrestlings and doubts.
Yeah.
It's not like we don't lack biblical language to go before God and say, "Why have you abandoned me? Why didn't you listen to me?" Is that slander against God? No, that was covenant fidelity back in the day. Why? Because you're actually addressing God with what it is that you're feeling, with what it is that you're bringing to Him. You are being honest, and that honesty is included in the book of worship that the church used for generations, the Old Testament Psalms.
Right.
So for me, the two biggest critiques outside of just naive are A, there's no recognition of the stubborn rebuke of unbelief versus the permission to doubt that is given other places. And then secondly, I just think he defines faith and doubt in ways that are guilty of massive critiques that just don't fit the biblical narrative about what faith is. Faith is allegiance. And I can have allegiance and thereby demonstrate faith even if I have questions about the object of my allegiance. If his point were only, well, yeah, but you want to grow beyond those. Okay, great. Absolutely.
Right.
But one of the ways you grow beyond them is by acknowledging that they're there in the first place and not being shut down when you have them by saying that doubt is slander against God.
Right.
That's what moving beyond them begins to look like. Correct?
Yeah. Because if he's, and I think we agree on this point, like if he's just going after, contentment to sit in that place and be perfectly happy just being like, you know what, I'm just skeptical. And I don't really,
I'm sure, I'm sure there are people who do that.
and it's like, and I'm just, I don't know, I'll sit in this thing for a few years and I'm just not going to do anything about it. I mean, I could see where, because then he's probably tying it up with like, God looking at us in a lukewarm sense too. Like, you're neither against me nor for me. You're just kind of like, you're a sloth and a sluggard. I mean, it's like, if he's just going after that, then it's like, well, okay, I can start to arrive at like how that could become toxic and unhealthy for any one person just to have all these questions and doubts and skepticism and not do anything about it. And it's like, okay,
right,
I could see how that would fester, and sure, I'd call negative to that. I don't know that I'd go as far to be like it's a slander against God and all those kinds of things. I'm like, I don't know. I don't really buy that. I mean, but it's like I could see how.
And where does it? Yeah, and where does it say it?
Yeah, exactly. So
it uses that language.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, but if we would talk about like walking alongside someone who's going through that type of thing and saying like, yeah, is there a maturity beyond that? Yeah, perhaps there is.
Yeah,
and absolutely.
Of course, we want to grow in our trust of God. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the way you grow in that trust is by acknowledging that trust takes work, that there are questions, and that those questions aren't always the most important thing.
Right.
But if you've just lost your child to leukemia, and we're certain because of what you were taught that God would heal your child if you had enough faith, and then you slam on them. Nope, that doubt is slander against the Almighty.
Yeah.
I think you've destroyed the person's faith.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I just think this kind of stuff, I don't know, it bums me out just because there is a kernel of truth for sure, but I just don't think it recognizes the convulsions that the church is going through as our insulated bubble now gets exposed to the stories of men and women across the wider world.
Yeah.
And yes, there are some people wandering from the faith. No question about it, because of doubts and uncertainty. But my argument would be far more wander away because they're not given permission to doubt and question, rather than those who are given permission and then just choose to rebelliously stay in there. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've got to say about that, Andy.
Yes, well said.
All right. So let's recap.
Okay.
First section of podcast. We love you, but grow a pair. So I'm working on that. Second section of podcast. What would we say? On fire? Not was there enough boldness
I think
in that part?
Yeah, I mean, my screen was cracking on the other end here.
And yeah, you might have to and never be a guy named Andy Savage. Just change that name.
Especially if...
And then don't go on the radio saying, well, it was flirty and it was this. I mean, it's kind of like what we were talking about last time. Just I don't know. I think the whole thing is awful and we grieve it and it's horrific. And, we join with all of you, at the marches and just saying, hey, this is a place of comeuppance that's, I think that's healthy. So, anyway, again, always appreciate your engagement, always appreciate your questions and concerns. And, so thanks for listening. Help us get better. Andy.
Yeah.
I'm in Ohio. I don't know if you knew that. We still have an Ohio mailing list, correct? Email list?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
we're going
to
use that. We're going to use that this week.
Are we now?
So
okay.
It's time. So if you live in Ohio, particularly around Columbus, and you're interested in finding out a little bit about what we got cooking in Ohio, sign up for this. Where is it, Andy?
VoxOH.com.
And there's a place you can sign up?
Yeah, it's the only thing on that page.
Oh, we have a website?
Yeah, my friend. Of course we do.
Oh my goodness, Andy.
Oh, wait a
See?
minute. Hold on just a moment here. Just a moment
Oh,
here. Now it's been a while since we've said it. Hold on. Maybe I just got the... I might... Oh, wait. Okay, hold on. We bought this. We bought this. What happened
we
here?
bought it. Is it
Yeah,
not
what
showing
happened
up?
here?
Is it not showing up?
Search for similar... Welcome to part... Okay, hold on. What is happening
Okay.
here? Hold
So
on.
let
What
me-
is happening here?
Hold
Okay.
on. So you don't
Okay.
have to listen to this anymore.
Subscribe. Vox.
Just email me
How
at
bizarre.
Mike at voxoc.com.
No. Don't do that. No. Don't do
Oh.
that. Hold on. Just
Don't
go
do
to
that?
voxpodcast.com. You can still subscribe at the top. That still works. I just got to fix the primary domain heading. So we're fine. Just go to voxpodcast.com. It's at the top. You can subscribe right there.
We don't have Vox Ohio?
No, we do. We do. I think
Okay.
the main domain got unlinked or something weird happened. It doesn't matter. You can get there. Just go to the top. It says subscribe to Ohio email list. Click there and you can subscribe. It's fine. It's
Okay. Okay.
I don't know what.
It's a tight ship,
Yeah.
as always. All right, Andy, can you get this out today?
Well, yeah. I got people waiting. We almost threw up a backup episode, and I get
know.
the old text at 8 p.m. my time last night saying, "Hey, I think I could do a show tomorrow morning."
Yeah. The
All
voice
right.
was better. The voice
Giddy
was
up.
better.
Yeah, you
So
sound
there
good.
you go, my brothers and sisters. All right, thanks again. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his counsel to you and give you peace in these days. Until next time, we're grateful for you. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Vox Podcast. Learn more about us at voxpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at the Vox Podcast, and now support us on Patreon at patreon.com/voxpodcast.